Throughout my past years at Think Global School, exploring the political and social dynamics of the places I've been was an intrinsic part of my experience. It is no surprise for any TGS student or educator that I really like politics, simply because I never stop talking about it. But the reason why I'm so interested in politics is because I discovered in it a tool to change my reality and improve the place where I'm from. Hi, my name is Luisa Branche. I'm a senior from Brazil, and today I'm here to tell you about my service learning/mastery project called Agents of Change, empowering Brazilian youth through political education. Statistics show that 2/3 of the Brazilian population considers themselves distant from politics. For a country that is a relatively new democracy, having such a disconnection between the government and its citizens poses real threats for the longevity and efficiency of our democracy. This political apathy, rooted in my country, was an issue that I decided to investigate through my service project here at TGS. First, through the service learning curriculum, I got the opportunity to break down the problem of political apathy in Brazil. And here, I purposely added this rather confusing diagram, which you don't really have to read, but just to showcase that I spent a lot of time in my first year just trying to break down this complex issue. And politics are intentionally overcomplicated, like this. But at the end of the day, every loop or every analysis that I did went back to the same root, the lack of political education. On top of that, I also capitalized on TGS's multidisciplinary curriculum, and through my statistics project last year, I went to parks and malls in my hometown to listen to young people from my community and better understand how they felt about politics and the role of education in shaping their political engagement. And what I observed in the end is that politics are not effectively communicated with young people. It's really hard for people to see themselves represented and for youth to realize that the power that they have. So with all of this in mind, the question I wanted to answer is, how can I promote political and civic education in my local community in Belo Horizonte through engaging workshops for young people? Once the project became more clear, I spent a lot of time learning about politics so that I could then teach it. I took online courses, I read books, I attended seminars, all related to political education in Brazil. And you could expect that the more I studied, the more confident I became. But instead, the exact opposite happened. The more I learned about politics, the more overwhelming it became, and all I could think of was, who am I to teach anyone? Being in the position of a teacher just felt wrong, and this fear paralyzed me for a really long time. It was only when I started to learn about education as a discipline that this started to change. So last summer, I had the opportunity to participate in the Yale Young Global Scholars Program, and I attended a seminar about how education could foster freedom, where Paulo Freire, a Brazilian philosopher and pedagogue, particularly called my attention. Some of you might know him or heard of his most famous book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. But just to summarize some of his views, Freire called traditional education banking education, where students are simply vessels for knowledge that memorize content, which he thought led to alienation and oppressive systems. What he proposes instead was a problem-posing education that uses education as a liberation praxis, in which students actively reflect about the world around them in order to transform it. Paulo Freire's views revolutionized education not just in Brazil, but in the whole world. And personally, I think innovative schools like TGS incorporate a lot of the critical pedagogy elements proposed by Freire. So this really resonated with me, and I wanted to incorporate some of his philosophy as a basis for my political education curriculum. So after that, I started to think, what if students could actually make politics themselves and lead the change in their communities? Because now you see, my role is no longer to come and teach and pass down the knowledge that I learned. My role was to be a mediator for students' learning and help them ask questions about politics and ask questions about their own reality. Because ultimately, I wanted to create an engaging workshops that dialogue directly with young people so that they can see themselves as political agents, critically reflect upon their realities, and by doing so, enhance their understanding of the political system in Brazil. So with the help of my community expert, I created a 3-lesson plan to specifically teach about public policy creation in Brazil. And the idea was to have more hands-on and interactive activities instead of me just standing there and telling them about how the government works. So this is a really short overview, but overall, the first session was meant to introduce them to politics, some important values in democracy, and for them to start seeing themselves as political agents of the present, not just the future. The second section was we did some activities to talk about the public policy framework, analyze local issues, and begin articulating some solutions for them. And then finally, the third session, students get the opportunity to actually implement the solutions that they come up with and start making change in their own community. One challenge that I found is that I needed a little bit of extra financial support in order to make this happen. So as an alumni and fellow at Civics Unplugged, I got to secure an international grant for this project to come to life. And then finally, after 3 years of sweat and tears dedicated to this project, I finally conducted my action and taught this course to 20 students at Cruz de Malta NGO, which is an NGO in my hometown that provides educational opportunities for students in a local slum. And it was really interesting because in my first session, I asked them a few questions to understand how they perceived politics, and most of them said that they associated politics with corruption and stealing money. But by the end of the third session, I asked them the same questions, but this time they associated politics with social change and collective effort. And not just that, but by the end of the course, they identified a need to improve hygiene among students at the NGO, and they implemented many hygiene boxes to address this need and also discuss how to preserve them in the long term. And this is just one example of a policy or solution that they found, because they came up with dozens of solutions. And this solution is not just to help themselves, but to help the 400 students that are assisted by this NGO. And yeah, so this was probably one of the most intimidating yet rewarding things that I've done in this past few years. My growth through the service learning program has been exponential, and seeing other students empower themselves as well has been transformative. So yeah, I just really want to thank all my TGS mentors and supporters, Chungman, Chris, Rachel, and Kenzie, my external mentor, Gisela Farias, and Luciana in the Cruz de Malta NGO for believing in me and giving me the space to conduct this project. Thank you.